Welcome and thank you for attending, and welcome to this meeting of the Co-operative Executive. The meeting today is open to the public, however we have received no questions from the members of the public. Please can I request that mobile telephones and other such equipment are switched to silent mode as not to disturb the conduct of the meeting. There is no fire test planned for today. If there is an emergency evacuation, please take instruction from the Town Hall staff. The assembly point is Tudor Square. Can I now introduce myself and then the rest of the corporate exec? So I'm Councillor Terry Fox. I'm the elected member for Manor Castle and leader of the council. Julie.
Good morning, I'm Councillor Julie Grocoat, Deputy Leader of the Council with responsibility for community safety and governance, and I've just had a message from Councillor Iqbal. He will be with us in about 5 minutes, Chair. Apologies for being late. Thank you, Julie. Jane?
Councillor Jane Dunn, Executive Member for Education, Children and Families.
Good morning, Councillor Kate MacDonald, Executive Member for Finance and Resources.
Paul?
Councillor Paul Turpin, Executive Member for Inclusive Economy, Jobs and Skills.
Douglas?
Douglas Johnson, Exec Member for Climate Change, Environment and Transport. And I've just got a message that Councillor Teal's running a little bit late, but we'll be here, I think.
Thanks. I understand we squeezed this meeting in today, so Councillor Paul Wood.
Councillor Paul Wood, Executive Member for Housing, Roads and Waste Management, and Councillor for Woodhouse Ward.
Thank you, Paul. David?
David Hollis, Assistant Director, Legal and Governance.
Joe? Thank you, Joe. Eugene?
Eugene Walker, Acting Chief Exec.
Okay, thanks everybody. Any other apologies?
Thank you, Chair. I've had apologies from Gillian Duckworth, Kate Martin, Kate Josephs and John McElraith.
Thanks. Oh, sorry, Abby, I'll let you introduce yourself. Sorry, Abby. Any declarations of interest? Okay.
Just for transparency, Chair, I just want it to be noted that I'm an observer. This is about item 9, an observer on the Sheffield City Trust, and I represent the council there. So.
Thanks, Kay. Any more declarations of interest? If not, okay. Oh, sorry. There is no exclusion of public and press. Item 5, we've got no public questions. Just at this moment, I did raise this in another meeting that we will be pulling the youth strategy off, as this will be the last leader's decision in over a decade, moving to a new system of work. So we've got a couple of items on the agenda. The first item is item 6, and Jill, can you introduce yourself and then introduce this report? Thank you.
Yeah, good morning everybody. My name's Jill Hurst. I'm the Head of Housing Investment and Maintenance in the Housing and Neighbourhood Service. Fortunately, Janet's a bit indisposed at the moment, so normally she would have, no doubt, because she feels very passionately about this, she would have attended. And thank you for putting this special meeting in place to enable this discussion to take place. So, I myself, I've worked on the Gleadless Valley Masterplan since 2017, and we came in January to get support from corporate executive around going out to consult on the draft Masterplan, and it was agreed that we would conduct a 6 weeks consultation period with all the residents on Gleadless Valley within the Masterplan area, and that we would then come back in March to outline the feedback that we'd had from the community regarding the draft Masterplan, what they liked, what they perhaps didn't like so much, and then that would be considered by a corporate executive as to how to proceed to the next stage. So this report has got a very long appendix of the sort of results from the the different forms of feedback that we've had, which I'll explain a little bit more about. But it is also has got 9 recommendations in the report for cooperative executive to consider in terms of which would relate to approving the master plan and the things that need to be put in place in order for the different aspects of the plan to then sort of move into the delivery phase. That delivery phase would obviously be over quite a considerable period of time, probably at least 10 years, but they are things that we need to have in place in order to sort of move this project forward. So the first thing I wanted to just flag with the report is that obviously the consultation has been, we've had a 6-week period of consultation, but actually it's much longer than that. We've really been talking to residents since 2017 about what concerns they had about Gleadless Valley and what improvements they would like to see. And there was, the process has been longer than we anticipated, partly due to the sort of pandemic and not being able to go out and consult with people. But we've now completed that piece of work. The draft master plan was published and we've gone and talked to people. So wasn't intending in an awful lot of detail to go through the sort of the summary of the master plan document, but really to focus on the feedback. So we've spent quite a lot of time and resources during that 6-week period, particularly reaching out to the residents whose home it is will be either replaced and be demolished and then replaced with new housing, or where it was going to be remodelled. So that was very much captured through face-to-face visits, interviews, and in some cases telephone and video calls. And there are around 242 residents affected by that in some way or another. Then we also had an online and paper-based survey which went out, which was available to everybody on Gleadless Valley, so that's all 4,500 residents. Just to remind people, the council actually only directly owns 2,500 of those homes on Gleadless Valley now. And then we sought feedback from a number of different stakeholder groups, and that's been either captured in writing, so it's not a specific survey. They were free to provide feedback on the master plan, on all different aspects of it. So all that feedback has now been analysed. There were opportunities for people not just to ask direct questions. Do you like this? Do you not like that? What do you think? What's your views about where you'd like to be rehoused to? But there was quite a lot of free text boxes that people could complete, and that has given us quite a bit of further insight into what concerns people. So focusing on the feedback from those residents that are most affected, so where their homes will be replaced or demolished. So we've set out more clearly in this report now the specific blocks. In the previous report you saw, you didn't have the specific addresses. They were in the master plan document. And we have seen in the last 6 weeks 153 of those households over all the 10 years. So we have very small number of private tenants in there. We've got some homeowners, but the majority are still council tenants. So we provided you an indication of who we actually saw. Private tenants we probably saw less of than most, but it's still 63% of all households were spoken to and have given us feedback. So the council tenants that we saw in person, there was a good level of understanding that we produced a master plan and what was in it, but there were some variations between the different sites, with the residents up at Herdings probably less aware of the master plan. The majority of homeowners and private tenants were aware of the master plan, but a majority of the landlords, the private sector landlords, were not aware of the master plan. That might be because we've not got all their details, I think, probably in terms of communication. But overall, of those people that we spoke to, 80% were supportive of the proposals in the master plan, with Homeowners and leasehold landlords less supportive, but still overall we had 80% support for it. Most people would wish to remain as a council tenant, so those that are council tenants, and even there's a strong desire for some of the owner-occupiers to be council tenants as well. And the comments also gave us some insight into whether people would want to remain on Gleadless Valley. And again, we've got tenants of very strong indication that they'd want to remain as a council tenant. With owner-occupiers, again, interested in becoming a council tenant, but with some concerns about whether that might mean they need to downsize. But also they've got concerns about their ability to be able to purchase a sort of an equivalent property with perhaps the based on the market value of their current home. So those are some of the concerns. On the feedback on the wider master plan, so that was the online and the paper surveys, we only got 94 surveys completed, which is an incredibly low number, only 2% of all homes. Having said that, they were extensive efforts to try and reach out and encourage people to undertake surveys. In Appendix 1, there's the list of all the engagement activities that we undertook, which included having some weekend sessions, drop-ins for people to come to, so there were opportunities for people to attend. But I think when you read those 94 surveys, there is some scepticism around whether the master plan would be delivered, and I think perhaps because the master plan's been in development for at least sort of 4 years, it may be that people have just thought that this was never going to happen, and perhaps really, and therefore had not participated. A lot of the 4,600 homes on Gleadless Valley, there's only about 25% of them are actually directly impacted by these proposals in terms of their housing. Everybody will be impacted in terms of the green space improvements that we're proposing under the master plan. But often it's only when you're directly affected in terms of your home that you perhaps do you participate. So that might be an indication that people looked at the master plan and thought, well, nothing's happening on my patch, therefore I probably don't, it doesn't affect me, therefore I don't need to complete a survey. But those that did complete the wider survey, there still seemed to be quite a lot of support for the proposals within the master plan. So we've tried to group the themes about what people liked about the housing proposals, the green space proposals, and the employment and skills and facilities proposals. Particularly on the housing side, people are really keen to see the improvements in the external appearance of the housing on there. They are really keen to see that the overall quality and the standard of housing is improved. They like the idea of having some private gardens, either that's on the new housing or by creating some on the existing. They're really keen to see the area be modernised, and they think the proposals will make the estate feel safer. What they least liked is they'd like to see more parking improvements. There's a concern that the views, fantastic views on Gleadless Valley, for some people the views might be obscured by perhaps some of the new housing that's going in. It's more of a view rather than they'd like to see the existing homes tackled first. So that was almost like saying, well, don't do the new homes first, do us first, the ones that are here first. And there was also some comments about rehousing, which again is not unexpected if you're losing your home. But overall, the majority of respondents did like the housing proposals. In terms of what people liked about the green space, they liked the idea of wildflower planting and more trees, improved walking routes and footpaths, increased parking. On the housing side, they wanted more parking, improving the wildlife, and that it will improve the overall image of the area. The things they least liked or got some reservations about were our ability to perhaps maintain things on a long-term basis, concerns about antisocial behaviour in some of the green spaces, and particularly quad bikes. That has come up on every survey an issue about quad bikes, and people feel it's quite intimidating, quite scary. Perhaps the loss of losing some of the green space is a concern in terms of housing. And then we go on to, but again, overall, the majority of people are saying in this survey that they like those green space proposals. On employment and skills, positive things are that there will be more activities for young people, improvements at in the shops, and then improving employment and skills opportunities. But equally, in terms of employment and skills, we got some comments back about antisocial behaviour and drug issues on the estate being a worry for people. But they would also like to see bus routes improved. Again, overall, only a small number of surveys, but generally positive feedback on the master plan. Then the third category was from stakeholders, and we've listed in the report the stakeholders who provided some sort of either written or verbal feedback. So quite a lot of focus in terms of green space issues, in terms of the groups that are involved. About 150 observations were received from which officers have had a look at, and having looked at that, we've broken that down into sort of 5 different areas of feedback which are listed in table 2, and that because it varied so widely in terms of here's some feedback that is asking just a question, could you just clarify this point, to we think we should change this word in the master plan, to there's a few things in the master plan that might not be quite right. For an example might be footpaths not shown correctly in the maps. A lot of the organisations were very much saying we'd really like to be involved in the next stage of this master plan. And then there were other things which are more things for officers to consider, sort of at the delivery stage. They find details about perhaps design elements. So we tried to give you some indications of that without giving all 150 of the sorts of things. We've also got some bits of feedback of things that people didn't like. But we've tried to summarise those things in terms of the themes that came from those groups. So they're in section 1.7.5. So we've taken that feedback and then thought about, so what does that mean for the housing proposals, what does that mean for the green space proposals, etc. And so the next part of the report says, it picks up on that. So what does that mean? What does the council need to do in response to that? So in terms of the housing stuff, obviously there was generally positive feedback on that because it's going to provide more homes with gardens, improved homes and some larger homes. But because of people saying that they would like to, those that are affected will want to stay within the valley, particularly was a strong indication of that, and they want to stay there because of schools and family connections or they care for somebody. Officers believe that we need to put in place a local lettings policy for Gleadless Valley, which can be done under the current allocations policy rules, although I am aware that some of that is being revisited. And so officers have had some initial ideas about what that local lettings policy would mean for Gleadless Valley, and that would be about giving them a priority to stay within Gleadless Valley, but also a second priority should initially they not be able to secure the home that they need to enable them to sort of come back to Gleadless Valley. So when households are affected by a demolition plan or remodelling, there are also obligations on the council to pay home loss payments when people are displaced, and that also will include disturbance payments in relation to sort of reasonable costs. So as part, one of the recommendations is obviously to put those arrangements in place so that officers can facilitate those payments being made to customers once demolition has been declared. And the report explains some of the differences that there are between council tenants and owner-occupiers, just for completeness. Leaseholders would be affected where we're just refurbishing the blocks as well, because of their, under the lease, we can seek to recover the cost of improvements to blocks, and there's a statutory process that we need to follow. So this report isn't about picking up on that statutory process. That will follow at the appropriate time in the future, should we approve the master plan. There was, as I said, there are some concerns about one or two of the what's called infill sites or new build sites that are in the master plan. Now, that housing will enable, if that housing is built out, that will enable us to make sure that there is a net increase in homes on Gleadless Valley. So there should be enough homes for everyone who's displaced. But there are some concerns about some of those new build sites. Some of that was around, as I said earlier on, obscuring views, or maybe that it impacts on some of the wildlife within Gleadless Valley. So at this stage, we've obviously not done detailed work on those. They're indicative plans, not been any detailed site surveys. And so I think we need to acknowledge that those concerns are there, but then work with the community during the feasibility design and sort of planning and consultation processes to try to take on board what those are and try to achieve a sort of win-win solution in terms of developing the sites, but also protecting the wildlife and the green space. So at this moment in time, officers would not recommend to members that we take out any specific sites in the master plan. So we've summarised again for you what the housing proposals are, and not recommending that there should be any major changes at this point in terms of those plans. The green space implications are on page 20. So the importance of the parkland feel of Gleadless Valley came through in terms of the master plan, and also the importance that the community have given to that green space. It's one of the things that people most like about Gleadless Valley. So there's a strong desire for us to continue to protect the existing woodland and wildlife, improve better access and maintaining green links. The community don't want to see trees being removed, and school children are particularly, school children were particularly keen about being involved in the shaping of any work that we do on Gleadless Valley, which I think I don't know if you've seen the video, but the kids at Bankwood School were absolutely brilliant and incredibly intelligent and very, very articulate. Really, really good. Really, really good. One of the most enjoyable things I think the officers have done in the last few weeks.
Thanks for that, John. Thanks for that comprehensive report, and the video is great, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is there any questions, comments from members? Paul?
Gleadless Valley Master Plan has been around the council for many years, at least 5. So it is with great pleasure that we have finally found a way to finance this plan and move this forward. When the master plan was first started, it lacked any funding to achieve the outcomes that were required. I have to pay tribute to the officers who have diligently progressed the plan, especially Jill Hurst, Georgina Parkin and Janet Sharp, also the leader of the council, Councillor Fox, who has supported the plan throughout, and the local councillors who have worked on achieving the proposed implementation. The area is desperate for a regeneration scheme of some of the homes as well as facilities within the area. We have taken great account of the environmental issues which have become more highlighted since the start of the project in 2017. Climate change now is vitally important when looking at all building and regeneration schemes. This plan will bring the area up to the future standards our residents demand, so we are ready for the challenges over the next decades. Thank you.
And thank you all for that. Any more? Look, Paul?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, Jill, brilliant work. I just echo what Paul Wood said, and thanks for all of the hard work. There were certainly times when it looked like it wasn't going to happen, but yeah, you've really pulled it out the bag, and I think it's a really good master plan. I was really also pleased with you saying about going with the public with the concerns around some of the parts of the master plan, and that we're not just going to either drop them or bulldozer them through, if that's the right analogy. But I just one little question, Jill, is so there's things, you know, as things become more apparent, that what this master plan, I just want to check, I guess, this master plan will guarantee the things that we commit to doing, but it doesn't necessarily, that won't be everything that could be done in the valley. As other issues come up over the next 10, 20 years, we can adapt, can't we?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I thought might come a bit more strongly through, I think it's there, but not because of the numbers that weren't directly affected, the numbers were small, was that there are other homes on Gleadless Valley in need of investment that are not sort of specifically highlighted as this is what we're going to do. So the houses in particular, and perhaps some of the smaller blocks, but within the investment plan, there is separate funding for some of that work. So whether it's things like roofing, kitchens and bathrooms, external wall works. So the report here highlights the £91 million to deliver the master plan, but there will still be additional investment on Gleadless Valley. Another example would be all the high-rise blocks are going to have fire safety works undertaken. That's not coming out of that 91 million, that's in addition. But also, as you know, as we go through this plan, there's going to be for us to seek additional grant funding, which might help us be able to sort of do more. So what they will be, I can't quite entirely predict, but you know, I think an annual review of this master plan through some sort of programme board, which I think we've not discussed in terms of detail about how it's going to be governed, is definitely necessary, and that will allow adjustments to be made. So, you know, if there are some things that people are really, when we get into the detail, don't like, we will then want to sort of revisit what else could we do to achieve that aspiration and objective that's still within the vision, but maybe doing it slightly differently. So it's not a finished article, it's set, a master plan anyway only sets the framework and the ambition. It's not necessarily, you know, tying everything down. I think we just need to make sure that we hold on to the vision and the ambitions and keep looking at that and making it as best as we possibly can within the budget envelopes that are there as well, obviously. Otherwise I'm going to get into trouble with Paul for not saying that. So yeah, within the budget envelope there will be elements where we can flex a little bit, and that will be, you know, by working with the community, you know, to make it as best we can, so that it's really important that they own it. I think they own the plan, and they're proud of that estate. I think that's what they're wanting to do. That's why they're saying they're really looking forward to being a modernised estate.
Thanks very much, Jill. That's really positive, and thanks again.
Thanks, Paul. Kate?
Thank you, Chair. A question and a comment. I'll do the comment first. Thank you so much for all the work that's been involved in this, and also I'd like to thank virtually the people of Gleadless Valley who've contributed on several occasions to shaping this. That's been brilliant, and I feel sort of really pleased that coming to the end of my tenure that we've got to this point with the master plan. I think I'd have been very frustrated if it hadn't yet been completed, because people don't always trust these processes. So I think it's really important that we demonstrate that we started it and we finished it as well. Well, at least in paper terms anyhow. So that was my comment. Thanks to you and all your colleagues. I know Georgina and others as well, and the team that have worked on it. My question was actually about the housing standards, and it's obviously identified as a risk in here. And we're very ambitious to ensure that we get the highest standards of housing on Gleadless Valley, best standards of everything, making them more resilient to climate change and stuff, decarbonising. So this is all costed based on current budgets, but I just wondered whether or not you could give some reassurance that should government funding become available to make more ambitious changes to the housing, that we'd have an opportunity to do that within this plan?
Yeah, absolutely, Kate. And I think the government's revisiting the standards that it wants for council housing anyway. And we're expecting actually during the summer that they will make some announcements around that. Our plans need to, our minimum standard needs to make sure we're at least aligned with that. But then we're also expecting that it will say more around things like energy efficiency and climate change. Whether it will go as far as, we might want it to, will be another question. But yeah, at the design stage and working with customers, we will be able to shape those standards. But I think it would be useful to do a piece of work initially to sort of say, this is the standard we're going to aim for. So this is what you can expect. It's almost like a charter type thing in terms of the standard for Gleadless Valley. We just need to make sure, I suppose, that that is something that doesn't mean that there's then unhappiness elsewhere in the city. Like, let's say we've got a slightly different standard for one, but we have to recognise the problems with the houses and we have to rectify them. And there might be more problems, there might be more and different problems on Gleadless Valley than there are elsewhere. But warm homes, homes that aren't damp, homes that are as cheap as possible to run, but also that are sufficient, that meet people's needs in terms of the space standards and things like people being able to work from home or children working home. They've got to meet those standards. So we've got a new build standard already, and I think that's a piece of work for us to do with the communities, is to talk about that, what that standard is now, and how would that work for Gleadless Valley, and might there be something different for those communities. So lots of opportunities. I think actually that's the next most exciting part of it, is actually sitting in a room with people with plans and talking about the standards and the designs.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Kate. Thanks, Jill. Jane?
Thank you, Jill, and I want to congratulate Councillor Wood and Councillor Fox and the local councillors and for actually delivering this. It started way back with myself, and I can remember having the conversations with Councillor MacDonald and going out into the community and the great ambition. And I think it's absolute testament to the hard work of all the council departments that they've managed to keep this going and deliver this despite a myriad of government legislation and policy and funding that's changed, and yet never has that vision for the people of Gleadless Valley gone off the radar, and that I think is testament, and I just want to say it's great when I hear that you're building homes, because that's what they are, they're homes, and I think it's great. So well done, Paul. I'm really excited by it.
Thanks, Councillor Dunn.
Thanks. Just one question about phasing, actually, Jill. So, first of all, it's really good to see that the consultation's got somewhere in the sense that it's generally accepted now. But I just thinking back to previous large-scale demolition schemes, and of course, people always promised that they would be first in line for the houses to be built on that site, but actually they had to be moved right out of the area because the houses were being demolished first. That then broke up the community, and actually no one ever did come back to where they started. And I just want to ask about phasing in the sense of, will there be, what's going to happen first, if you like? Will there be any new houses being built on infill space first so that there's continuity, or do we have to clear some houses and demolish them first?
Sorry. One of the reasons we were quite keen to get into corporate executive and get this report hopefully approved, is that there are some new build developments within Gleadless Valley that are due to be completed in 2023, 2024. So, and there are also some sites on the outskirts of Gleadless Valley at Berners and Daresby, so really quite close to Gleadless Valley. And there might have been that potential missed opportunity of people being able to if we don't move quite quickly. And we will declare it in phases aligned to that. But we're also gave a commitment that the other aspects of the master plan new build, which is the infill housing, but then the specific discrete new build sites, is that we work through and try to get those built out as possible before people move. But obviously that's quite a trick to pull off, because you would align, he's like getting all the moons and the stars to sort of align. But that's certainly still in our thinking and was within the master plan document to say actually this is the pace at which we think we will be going at, and it aligns too. And we want to try, but we also have to acknowledge that in some of those locations there will be a lot of building activity going on off at once. It does need quite a lot of coordination. We're intending to appoint a programme manager for this, and their job is to do all that coordination and obviously working with the community.
Thanks very much for that. Just always very helpful to try and keep the strength of communities where it is. Great.
Thanks for that. If there's no more comments, Jill, can you take back to the team our gratitude and thanks for the work that we've done. It's great to see this get over the line, and I know Councillor Wood has been behind this all the way, so it's great news actually for people on the valley that we can kind of move forward on this. Colleagues, we've got recommendations. Can we approve those recommendations? Thank you. Agreed. Thank you. Thank you, Jill. Thank you. On to the next item, item 8, the Advocacy Hub contract extension. Who's presenting?
Hi everyone, thanks for allowing us the time to present. We're talking today about the Advocacy Hub contract extension. So currently the Advocacy Hub operates in Sheffield. So currently the Advocacy Hub operates in Sheffield, and it provides advocacy support for a number of different areas that support social care and NHS complaints. The current advocacy contract is due to end at the end of this month. In light of that, there's some major legislation changes coming to social care and advocacy in particular. For those who are familiar with deprivation of liberty, this will be changing to liberty protection safeguards, which has quite an impact on the way advocacy and social care will be delivered in the future. Quite the impact of these changes we're not able to measure at this point. There's some unclarity from government perspective around the future of this legislation. We're proposing an extension of 12 months to enable us to review the impact of this legislation change and be able to procure and go out to commission a new service that will meet the future needs of individuals in Sheffield around this. The current Advocacy Hub is actually an overarching hub that includes a number of different organisations in Sheffield. Amongst them are Disability Sheffield, Citizens Advice, Cloverleaf, which are very strong partners in the city. We feel that we've got a very good relationship with them as commissioning and contract officers, and that they're delivering a very good service in Sheffield currently. There is also future aspirations that I think we want to explore within this additional time. Explore where there might be some perceived gaps or possible gaps in the market, and gaps in what type of advocacy we commission within Sheffield currently. And we'd like to develop that element further alongside impact assessing the legislation change. The budget around this, if you see in the figures, our original contract was based on assumptions around demand. As previously this wasn't a commissioned service by Sheffield City Council, it was very much a spot purchased. We probably didn't have the data around when we initially set the level of referrals and in turn the level of budget around this. What we've predicted in here is probably a more realistic budget for the next 12 months, which is the 1.04 million. And we're hoping that we're confident that this budget will enable us to deliver the advocacy service that we need in Sheffield currently. we think we've considered a number of different options around procuring a new framework or possibly going out for a light touch. We received advice from our commercial services and legal services around what the best action is around this, and we feel that an extension to the current contract would be the best option in order to enable us that additional time and really look at that major legislation change coming. And we will be reviewing this we'll be reviewing this ongoingly, but we'll probably be starting the work on the next commissioning as soon as this one goes through. But it is a 6-month lead-in time, but also we really need to understand, due to the large number of stakeholders, we really need to be talking to a lot of people before we can go out and do this piece of work again. So it's not going to go off the radar as soon as this decision is made. It's kind of it is an ongoing process. But we're hoping that this extension of 12 months will be granted on that basis.
Thanks, and thanks, Sarah. Any questions or comments? Okay.
Thank you. And I was cabinet member when we first moved to commission this model a few years ago. So I really support it. I just wondered about any feedback, whether we've had any, whether we've got feedback in terms of the model working. It's obviously much easier for people to have a single point of access, but I just wondered whether or not it was the users of the service, whether they wanted to or had to, felt that they were getting good service. Thank you.
Yes, definitely. I think, well, from a social care and health perspective, so as there was one point of access, there's also one point of contact around development of services. So I think the Advocacy Hub have been able to be involved in a lot more of the discussions around the future of the individuals they provide advocacy for, being able to represent them as a hub. I think it's been a lot easier around the referrals, but equally it's been a lot easier to problem solve going to the hub model rather than disperse that was previously.
Thank you. Any more questions, comments, Douglas?
Just very brief, I'm just going to say that I'm very pleased to see this because, of course, it's critical with people who are at most at risk in society, but also it's about providing a bit of stability to the numerous voluntary sector organisations in this. So, yeah, this definitely wants improvement. Thank you.
Thanks for that. Any more questions, comments? If not, thanks ever so much. Pass it on. Set recommendations, can we agree those? Agreed. Thank you. Thanks ever so much.
Thank you very much.
On to item 9. Mr. Shoedavid.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you, Chair. This was due to be introduced by Ryan Keyworth, but he's otherwise indisposed, so I'm introducing today. This is a report that seeks to enter into revised funding arrangements with Sheffield City Trust. It follows on from the leisure strategy that was approved last November. The major sports facilities, which are the Arena, Hillsborough Leisure Centre and Ponds Forge, are due to return to the Council in 2024. The decision was made to go out that when they return that the leisure strategy would look to another provider for those, and the Sheffield City Trust has decided that it is not going to bid to be a provider from 2024. They therefore needed to consider what the implications of the strategy approved in November was for them, and that having taken the time to look at it themselves, they've decided that they will cease to operate from 2024. That means that they'll hand the remaining facilities back to the council at that time that they currently operate, and this will allow the council to include all those facilities within its leisure strategy in the procurement where it's looking for operators. The consequence for that, excuse me, so that's a positive for the council, but the consequence for the trust is that end date brings into focus their accounting and auditing treatment, and they need to have a positive balance sheet, and so that they remain a going concern from now through until 2024. The current arrangements that we have are a funding agreement in relation to the major sporting facilities and an annual letter of comfort which deals with their cash flow requirements as well as a couple of other matters. That in itself, because the letter of comfort is not legally binding, does not give the trustees the legal certainty that they need to operate as a going concern and continue through to 2024. So the recommendations are for a revised funding arrangement that has been proposed in consultation with the Trust. This is based on a business plan that they have provided and has been agreed with the Council, and that business plan shows a funding requirement through to the end of their operations. The proposal is also to enter into revised pension arrangements, which have been agreed with the South Yorkshire Pension Authority, which will deal with some of the balance sheet issues that they've got in relation to the current arrangements. The Trust have provided us with the initial business plan for the funding arrangement. That's a very prudent assumption, which is what the Council want. It shows us what is at current a likely worst case scenario in terms of funding that they require. We will work with the Trust over time to make sure that that is honed further, but a prudent one at this stage is what we were seeking. That funding is affordable from a combination of the current revenue budget, but also reserves that have been specifically set aside for this purpose, because we knew it was always going to be at some point that the Trust would wind up and some of the funding would be required. The principle of the funding agreement has to be that it remains affordable for the Council, and it secures the Trust cooperation on handing back the facilities and working to hand over them to a new provider. The added benefit of these arrangements is for the staff of the Trust. It gives them the security to know that it will continue to operate and that they will almost certainly all TUPE over to new providers at the end of these arrangements. It also gives security of the facilities being offered to the public in the meantime, without the risk of a handback to the Council at short notice or them having to be closed. I think the recommendations are fairly self-explanatory, but if there's any particular questions, Chair.
Thanks, David. Any questions, comments? Councillor Iqbal?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just one question and a comment from me. When do we go out for tender for the facilities? And my comment is, Chair, that we've had a very, very difficult period. The pandemic, obviously the closure of facilities, us having to continuously bang on the door of the government to come in and support these facilities, which they finally did. And as David said in his presentation, you know, these facilities are used by Sheffielders, both young and old, from across the city, and provide subsidised activity as well. It benefits a number of the priorities the council set around health and well-being and being active and so forth. And the final point is, could we also send a copy of this report to David Walsh, because it seems like he's always misrepresenting what we say. So if we could mail one across to Mr. Walsh, that would be great as well. Thank you, Chair.
If I could just comment, because obviously from my point of view as was Section 151 officer in this, it has been a really difficult financial situation with COVID, and it's a long-term relationship with Sheffield City Trust that in our financial context did threaten to become quite difficult. But I think we've got to this point now, and I'd just like to record from my point of view, having been involved, I think we've in the last year, 18 months, had a really collaborative arrangement to resolve a difficult situation. And I think that has included elected members, the exec members. Scrutiny have been involved in that. We've worked constructively with the chair of the trust and the trustees to get to this wind down situation. And I think also just internally, I've been involved, but there's been a lot of work by David Ollis, Ryan Keyworth, Lisa Firth, Tammy Whittaker and the teams behind this and working with the trust. And I think it's been a great collaborative effort, and I think getting a good resolution that allows us to have a really positive process for the future about that investment in the city's leisure facilities. So, thank you.
Thanks, Eugene. David?
Just to pick up on Councillor Iqbal's question about when we're likely to go out to procurement, that's going to be sometime this year. where there's soft market testing going on at the moment, and the procurement strategy will be coming to members to approve, hopefully in the spring.
Fantastic. So that means it'll be seamless, hopefully. Thanks ever so much.
Thanks, Mas. Kate?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to David and Ryan who've done the work on this. This for me, I'm pleased to see it because it's the next step in terms towards our ambitious plans for leisure services for the city. So it's really good news, and it is really important that there's a smooth transition, and that's why we need an agreement of this nature. And I know that there is a very constructive working relationship with the trustees of Sheffield City Trust and the council. And to be honest, I mean that's in the best interest of the services, the service users, and the people of Sheffield. And long may that continue. Well, it won't be that long, but I think it's important to note that Scrutiny has considered this report as well. We went to talk to Scrutiny last week about it. And not only did they endorse it, but they also moved a vote of thanks to the trustees of Sheffield City Trust, recognising that they have played a role in providing services for the people of Sheffield for the last 30 years. So I think that the way it was presented in the press was very unhelpful last week, but I think now there's a much wider understanding of what the purpose of this is and where we're going with it, and it's one step on the path to our fantastic investment in new facilities for Sheffield. Thank you.
Thanks, Kate. Any more questions, comments? If not, there's recommendations. Sorry, Councillor.
Just got one question, and David, really. It's about the letter of comfort. And I appreciate it's been a really difficult process, and you know, there's some going through there somewhere. What's the reason for them needing something stronger than the letter of comfort when that's been in place, it seems, without problems for a number of years? I just didn't quite get that bit.
The letter of comfort isn't legally binding, and where they've got an ongoing basis and that they can see that they will continue for a longer period of time, then that is sufficient. It's nothing to do with the council's covenant. It's about the fact that they can now see certain things coming to crystallise, that they need that certainty that they can get the funding.
Okay, thanks for that, Douglas. If not, we've got recommendations. Can we agree those recommendations? Agreed, thank you. If I may, just before we break at the end of the agenda, we have one more co-op exec meeting in the diary for April, but that will fall within PERDA. So I'm going to take the chair's prerogative to be able to say something political before we go into PERDA, and to thank everyone, members, for the cooperative agreement, Labour and Green, for getting business over the line. I don't really think Sheffield has seen us any blips in the road. We've delivered so much as a cooperative executive over the year. And our aim was to work as an executive to make sure that we got stability. And when you just look at some of the stuff that we said we wouldn't get to in this year, like the one-year plan, like delivering the budget, like delivering the local plan, the clean air zone, the city vision, if you look at the leisure strategy that we've just discussed, the 10-point plan, and you look at the lights that they rolled out across this city, if you look at the community safety, the sustainable community wardens that are now operating on our streets within our communities, if you look at the street tree inquiry that is now up and ready to roll, and you finally look at the youth strategy that we have invested not only time, effort, but money into our young people, I think for us as a cooperative executive, we did hold out the hand for all parties to take part in this. Some chose not to. I think that showed a backward looking and a part of the past. But I think going forward, we've shown if this is to be the last cooperative executive and this style of governance as we move into the committee stage, I'd just like to thank every one of you, and obviously Paul's left her own, Councillor George, Linda Zammondies, on leave today. But I'd just like to thank you all for getting this over the line on behalf of Sheffield. Thank you. And I'll close the meeting. Thank you.